My name is Daniel. I drive for Uber in Oakland. I used to study engineering at Cal State East Bay. I liked statics and load calculations. I liked knowing how much a beam could hold before it failed. If something cracked, there was a reason. If a structure leaned, you could measure why. There was comfort in that. Driving nights in Oakland, well, it doesn't work like that. I usually log in around 8 p.m. and I stay out until 4 or 5 in the morning. The money's better after dark. Surge pricing hits around the bars near Lake Merritt. Airport runs stack up near Hagenberger Road. Late night hospital pickups come in from Summit and Highland. If you know when to position yourself near International Boulevard or Broadway, you can make enough to cover rent and chip away at loans. But nights also mean you see everything. I've been punched once on International near 42nd. A guy got in already angry, said it took too long even though I was there in 3 minutes. He swung before I could say anything. Split my lip on the steering wheel. I finished the ride anyway. Someone tried to yank my door open at a red light near 73rd Avenue. I had it locked. He banged on the window with something metal and ran when traffic moved. A woman's boyfriend leaned through my driver's side window outside a liquor store near Fruitvale Bart and told me if I drove off without her, he'd follow me home. I waited. She got in. He didn't follow. One night outside Eastmont Mall, a kid no older than 16 grabbed for my phone mount while I was stopped. I shoved him back and drove off before he got a grip. It happens. You work anyway. Oakland at night is specific. International Boulevard smells like exhaust and fryer grease. Lake Merritt reflects red and blue police lights across the water after midnight. The stretch of 98th Avenue near the Coliseum turns empty after 1:30 a.m., except for warehouse workers and the occasional car creeping too slow. Drivers talk. Not officially. Just small comments while you're waiting in the airport queue or parked near a 24-hour gas station. Don't idle in alleys off Eads Avenue. Don't accept pickup points that land inside fenced industrial lots near the Port of Oakland. Don't circle Lake Merritt after midnight if the route loops twice. And if you're near 98th and you see trash piled near the curb at 2 in the morning, cancel the ride. Most of it sounds like paranoia or superstition. Drivers work alone too long and start inventing patterns. I didn't pay attention at first. If a pin showed up, I drove to it. If it paid surge, I kept it. Bills don't care about rumors. My coverage area is mostly East Oakland and the lower hills. I take rides from West Oakland BART down to San Leandro Street. I've driven up Joaquin Miller Road more times than I can count. I've waited outside the Port of Oakland gates hoping for a decent freight working tip. I've done airport runs from Hagenberger at 3 in the morning when the roads are empty and the Bay Bridge glows in the distance. You learn how to scan people real fast. Shoes, hands, eyes in the rearview mirror. You notice who sits too close, who breathes too heavy, who won't stop staring at the back of your head. I installed a dash cam after my second week. Interior and exterior. Not because of ghosts, because of people. The first time something didn't make sense, I assumed I was tired. Long shifts will do that. When you drive 12 hours straight, the city starts to flatten. Streetlights blur. You replay the same blocks over and over. Mandela Parkway looks the same at 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. The port cranes look like metal skeletons against the sky. The water near Jack London Square sits black and still. There are normal dangers here. Robberies, fights, drunk passengers who throw up and argue about cleaning fees, and that part I understand. You can measure that risk. You can calculate it. The other things don't fit into numbers. The first rule I broke was on 98th Avenue. It was 1:47 in the morning. I was idling near Hagenberger Road after an airport drop-off when a surge ping popped up. Pickup location, an alley off Eads Avenue, behind a row of auto body shops. Good fare. Close by. I accepted it. And that's when I learned why drivers don't stop near trash. after 1:30 a.m. Case 1. The 98th Avenue Rule. The pickup ping came through at 1:47 a.m. while I was stopped near the Chevron on Hegenberger Road. It was a short ride request with a decent surge attached. The pickup location sat just off 98th Avenue, down a narrow alley behind a row of auto body shops near Eads. I remember thinking it was easy money. The alley wasn't well lit. One wall was corrugated metal. The other was cinder block stained dark near the base from years of runoff. 3 large green trash bins sat against the wall halfway down. A pile of black garbage bags was stacked beside them. No movement. No people waiting with phones out. I pulled forward slightly and stopped near the pickup pin. I put the car in park and turned on my hazards. The app showed the rider's name, but I didn't recognize it. No profile photo. I waited. 30 seconds passed, then 60. The alley was quiet except for the hum of my engine and a faint electrical buzz from a broken light fixture above one of the shop doors. The trash bag sat still. At 90 seconds, I leaned forward to check the map again, and that's when one of the garbage bags shifted. Wasn't wind, the air was still. The bag twitched from the inside, then settled. I stared at it for a few seconds, expecting a raccoon to burst out. Oakland's got plenty of those. The bag moved again. Slower this time, like something inside it was adjusting its position. I reached to cancel a ride, and before I could press the button, the lid of the nearest green trash bin lifted halfway up. Not fast. It rose steadily, like someone inside was pushing it with both hands. And then something stood up behind it. At first I thought it was someone wearing a costume. It was bright green, rounded at the shoulders. The surface looked soft, almost foam-like. Its head was large and oval-shaped with 2 wide, circular eyes that reflected my headlights without blinking. It straightened fully, clearing the top of the trash bin. The skin along its side had split at the seam near the ribs, and through the opening, I saw darker tissue underneath. Not fabric or stuffing, something wet. A second shape rose from the pile of garbage bags. This one unfolded awkwardly, pushing plastic aside as it stood. It had the same bright green surface, same wide mouth stretched too far across its face. When it opened that mouth, I saw rows of small, narrow teeth packed tightly together. They didn't rush me right away. The first one waddled forward 2 steps. Its legs moved stiff at the hips, then loosened. It adjusted to the pavement, like it was getting used to standing upright. And then it sprinted. It covered the distance between the trash bins and my rear bumper in, less than 2 seconds. The impact hit the trunk hard enough to shake the steering wheel in my hands. My rear camera flashed white for half a second, then went to static before returning to a distorted view. The second one ran toward the passenger side. It slammed both hands against the rear window, its face pressed flat against the glass. The green surface stretched thin around its teeth. I could see the seam splitting wider near its cheek. The plastic-looking eyes didn't blink. They just stared directly through the glass at me. Well, I shifted into drive and I hit the gas. The tires spun for a moment on loose gravel before catching. The first creature slid off the trunk, and I heard something scrape across the metal as I accelerated. I didn't look back until I hit the end of the alley. I blew through the stop sign at 98th and I turned onto Hegenberger without even slowing. My hands were tight on the wheel. My heart was pounding hard enough that I could feel it in my neck. I drove 3 blocks before checking the rear view. The alley was empty. Nobody was chasing the car, no green shapes in the road, no movement at all. I kept driving until I reached the I-880 on-ramp. I pulled onto the shoulder just before merging and I put the car in park. I stepped out. The trunk had a shallow dent just left of center. Not deep, but visible even in low light. There was a smear across the paint. Thick, dark green. It wasn't paint transfer. It had texture. Small, fibrous strands ran through it. And the smell hit me when I leaned closer. Bleach mixed with spoiled vegetables, like a dumpster behind a grocery store in summer. I wiped some of it with a napkin from my glove box. The residue stuck to the paper and left a streak across the clear coat. And I got back in my car and I drove home. The next morning, in full daylight, the dent was still there. The green smear had dried and hardened along the edge. I tried to scrub it off at a self-serve wash on International Boulevard. It lightened, but it didn't disappear completely. There were faint scratch marks near the trunk latch, 4 thin lines spaced evenly apart. Claw marks. I checked the ride history in the app. The pickup was marked "Canceled by driver." The rider's name had disappeared. The pickup location no longer showed the alley behind the body shops. It now sat at the front curb on 98th. I drove back that afternoon. The alley looked normal. Trash bins upright, garbage bags stacked neatly. No damage, no dents in the bins, no green residue on the pavement. I stood there for a minute, staring at the same spot where the first one had stood up. A man from one of the shops stepped outside to smoke and asked if I needed something. I told him no and left. After that night, I stopped accepting any pickup where the pin landed inside an alley. If the dot sits behind a building instead of on the street, I cancel it immediately. And I don't stop next to open trash piles on 98th Avenue after 1:30 in the morning. I don't care how high the surge is. Case 2. The Lake Merritt Loop. The pickup came in at 12:32 a.m. on a Thursday. I just dropped off 2 kids near Grand Avenue and was idling along Lakeside Drive, facing the water. The lake was flat and dark, broken only by streaks of yellow and white from the apartment buildings across the way. A light wind pushed small ripples toward the concrete edge. A few people were still out walking, but most of the park had emptied. The request popped up less than a block away. Pickup location: Lakeside Drive near the Pergola. Rider name: Linda. No profile photo. I accepted it, and I pulled forward under the street lamp. The pergola sat just off the path, white columns glowing faintly under park lighting. A few benches lined the walkway. Nobody stood directly under the lamp. And then I saw her walking up from the grass. She wasn't running or waving. She just walked straight toward the car, like she already knew which one was mine. She was barefoot. Her hair was dark and wet, hanging in thin strands against her cheeks and neck. Wasn't damp like sweat. It looked soaked. Her dress clung tightly to her legs and waist. No jacket, no purse, no shoes in her hands. She opened the rear passenger door and slid in. The seat cushion made a soft sound under her weight. "Daniel?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "You're Linda?" She nodded. The destination on the app read Grand Lake Theater. Easy ride. Around the lake, up Grand Avenue, 2 turns and done. I pulled away from the curb and merged onto Lakeside Drive. The navigation arrow traced the edge of the water in a smooth curve. I checked the rearview mirror. She sat upright, hands folded loosely in her lap. Her eyes weren't on me. She stared out the window at the water sliding past. I saw her hair dripping occasionally onto the seat. I heard it. A faint tap when droplets hit vinyl. "Long night?" I asked. She didn't answer. I figured she'd had a few drinks and didn't want to talk. That wasn't unusual. As I passed the intersection near Bellevue Avenue, The navigation screen flickered. The blue arrow marking my car froze in place, even though I was still moving. The rest of the map continued scrolling forward, but the route line disappeared. The destination box at the top of the screen went blank. No address, no turn instructions, just a spinning circle. I checked my signal bars, full service. I tapped the screen twice, nothing changed. App's acting weird, I said, half to myself. No response from the back seat. I glanced up at the mirror, and the seat was empty. I hit the brakes hard enough that my seatbelt locked against my chest. The car behind me swerved around and laid on the horn. I steered toward the curb near a patch of grass and turned on my hazards. I twisted around fully in my seat. The back door was closed. The seatbelt strap hung loose, still slightly angled, as if someone had just unbuckled it. The fabric of the seat was darker where she'd been sitting. I reached back and pressed my hand against it. Wet. Not soaked, but clearly damp. I stepped out of the car and checked both sides. No door closing sound, no footsteps on pavement, no splash from the water. The walkway behind me was empty, except for a couple walking a dog about 50 yards away. The lake itself looked undisturbed. I got back in and I stared at the app. The ride was still active. The timer continued counting upward. The destination field remained blank, no reroute, no cancellation notice. I tapped End Ride. The screen froze for several seconds, and then the ride completed automatically. 1 star appeared immediately. No message, no delay, just the rating. I sat there for a minute, engine idling, hazards blinking. The back seat smelled faintly like lake water, not chlorine or sewage, just that specific smell of algae and concrete that hangs near the edge of Lake Merritt in summer. I drove the rest of the night distracted. Every time I looked in the mirror, I expected to see her again. Well, the next 2 days passed without incident. Normal rides, fairly normal people. A hospital nurse from Summit. A bartender heading home near Jack London Square. A couple arguing quietly in Spanish on International. On Saturday night, I got home around 3:30 a.m. and turned on the TV while heating leftovers. KTVU was running a late-night segment about local cold cases. The anchor introduced a story about a woman who had drowned in Lake Merritt 3 years earlier. They showed footage of divers entering the water near the pergola. Yellow police tape strung between trees. Candles arranged along the railing. Then they put her photo on screen, and I stopped moving. Dark hair, narrow jawline, small scar just above the left eyebrow. The exact same scar I'd noticed in the mirror when she turned slightly toward the streetlight. They switched to the driver's license photo. It was clearer. Same face, same slight asymmetry in the mouth, same thin nose, same eyes. I walked closer to the TV. The report said she'd left a bar near Grand Avenue just before midnight. Friends said she seemed fine, but she never made it home. Her body was recovered 2 days later from the lake. Cause of death: drowning. They displayed her full name: Linda Phillips. I muted the TV and I stood there for a long time. The back seat of my car still smelled faintly damp the next morning. I drove back to Lakeside Drive in daylight, and I parked nearby. Joggers passed. A couple pushed a stroller along the path. The lake looked harmless. I stared at the spot where she'd stepped into my car. There were no signs or markers, no memorial plaque, just concrete and water. Since that night, I don't complete full loops around Lake Merritt after midnight. If the route circles the water twice, I reroute manually through Grand Avenue or I cut over toward Broadway. If a pickup pin lands too close to the pergola late at night, I let it expire. I have been mugged in this city. I've been punched in the face by a drunk stranger. I've had someone threaten to follow me home. Those are real dangers. You can see them coming. None of those people vanished without opening a door. And none of them left a 1-star rating after they were already dead. Case 3. The construction worker. The pickup came in at 5:10 a.m. on a Tuesday. That's the quiet hour. The bars are closed, the overnight hospital traffic slows down, the sky is still dark, but there's a gray line forming over the hills. Most of the rides at that time are airport runs or early shift workers. The request came from Mandela Parkway near West Grand Avenue. Rider name, Carlos. No profile photo. I accepted it, and I pulled up along the curb beside a stretch of industrial fencing. A row of shipping containers sat across the street. A semi-truck idled 2 blocks away. He was already standing there when I arrived. Hard hat in one hand, reflective vest over a long-sleeve shirt, work boots dusted white around the toes. He looked like he'd been up for hours. He opened the back door and got in.
"Morning,"
he said. "Hey, yeah, morning," I replied. "You headed to work?"
"Yeah, early shift,"
he replied. The app showed the destination as an address near the Port of Oakland, a chemical processing facility on the edge of the industrial zone, just off Middle Harbor Road. I'd driven that direction before, but I didn't remember that specific plant. He buckled his seatbelt carefully and rested his hard hat on his lap.
"You drive nights?"
"Yeah, mostly," I replied. He nodded.
"That's rough. I used to do graveyard. Hard on the body."
His voice was steady, calm, friendly in a tired way. We merged onto West Grand and headed toward I-880. The freeway was nearly empty. A few headlights in the distance. The cranes at the port rose up like black shapes against the fading sky. "How long you been doing construction?" I asked.
"Long enough,"
he said with a small smile.
"Pays the bills."
He told me about early morning concrete pours, about how the air smells different near the water before sunrise, about how he liked getting work done before the city fully woke up. It felt normal, and that sticks with me. There was nothing wrong with him. No strange smell, no odd breathing, no strange pauses in conversation. Just a normal guy heading to work. As we exited the freeway and moved deeper into the industrial area, the roads grew narrower. Warehouses lined both sides. Chain-link fences topped with barbed wire. Security cameras mounted on poles. The address was about a mile ahead.
"So you ever get weird riders at night?"
"Sometimes," I replied. "Drunk people, mostly." He nodded.
"Yeah, I bet."
There was a pause, and then he added,
"You know, it's always nice to talk to good people."
I glanced at him in the mirror. He was looking straight ahead, not at me. We turned onto the final road. The address was coming up on the right. Except there was no building. I slowed down. The app's blue arrow pointed directly to a stretch of cracked concrete behind a rusted chain-link fence. No facility, no lights, no structure at all. Just an empty lot covered in weeds and debris. I pulled to the curb and put the car in park. This doesn't look right. Is this address correct? I turned around, and the back seat was empty. The hard hat was gone. The seatbelt strap hung loose, still angled across the seat, as if it had just been unlatched. I stepped out of the car. The fence had a sign bolted to it. Facility closed. Chemical accident. Unauthorized entry prohibited. Below that, smaller text listed the year. 6 years ago. The name of the plant was printed at the top. and it matched the destination in the app. I walked closer to the fence and looked inside. The concrete foundation was cracked and blackened in places. Metal beams lay twisted near the far end of the lot. Nothing stood taller than my waist. The app chimed softly. Ride complete. 5-star rating. A tip notification followed seconds later. I got back in my car, and I stared at the back seat. Dry. No dirt, no footprints, no water. I picked up my phone, and I searched the plant name, and the first result was a news article. Explosion at chemical facility near Port of Oakland. 8 workers killed. The article was dated 6 years earlier, and there was a group photo attached. Construction crew standing in front of the plant months before the accident. I zoomed in. Third man from the left. Hard hat tilted slightly back. Same dark hair. Same square jaw. Carlos. I sat there with the engine idling. Traffic began to pick up as the sky lightened. A delivery truck passed behind me. The driver didn't look twice. I checked the ride receipt in the app. Pickup, Mandela Parkway. Drop off, plant address. Time, 5:10 to 5:31 a.m. Rating, 5 stars. Tip, $8. No glitches or missing data. Everything documented cleanly. Well, I drove back toward the freeway slowly. Halfway up the on-ramp, I glanced in the rearview mirror again. Empty. You know, I've had passengers disappear before, but this one thanked me. It's always nice to talk to good people, he said. The next time I drove past that stretch of road, I didn't look at the empty lot. I kept my eyes forward and I stayed in my lane. Some riders, they don't need a ride to get where they're going. I think they just need someone to talk to on the way. Case 4. The Blood Bank Ride. The pickup came in at 1:18 a.m. on a Sunday. Location, International Boulevard near 14th Avenue. That stretch stays active late. Liquor stores with metal grates halfway down. A taco truck shutting off its burners. A bus idling at the stop with no passengers getting on. The streetlights throw yellow light over everything, and the pavement always looks wet even when it isn't. The rider's name was Victor. No profile photo. I pulled up in front of a closed discount store. The security gate was down. The sidewalk was mostly empty. He stepped out from behind the bus bench. He moved slowly, not injured or unsteady, just deliberate. He opened the rear passenger door and got in without hesitation. "Daniel?" he asked. "Yeah, that's me." He shut the door gently. And the smell hit me immediately. Rot. Not garbage rot or sour milk. It was heavier. And underneath it, it was almost like the scent of blood. Iron. The kind you taste when you bite the inside of your cheek. It filled the cabin in seconds. The destination in the app read Blood Source Donation Center on Broadway. Open 24 hours. I pulled back into traffic, and in the rearview mirror I got a clear look at him. His skin was pale in a way that didn't match the lighting. Not just light. It looked stretched tight across his cheekbones. His lips were thin and almost gray. His hair was combed straight back, dry and flat. He wasn't looking out the window or looking at the dashboard. He was staring directly at the back of my head. "So you, heading to donate?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he smiled slowly, and I could see his teeth were small and evenly spaced. Very even and very clean. The grin didn't reach his eyes. We passed 19th Avenue, and the car felt smaller than usual. The smell of rot stayed steady. He leaned forward slightly, just an inch. The distance between his face and my headrest closed. In the mirror, he didn't blink. Not once. At the next red light near 23rd Avenue, I watched his reflection carefully. His chest wasn't rising. There was no visible breathing that I could see. Instead, the muscles in his throat pulsed once every few seconds. A slow contraction under the skin. He leaned closer again, another inch. I adjusted my seat forward slightly without making it obvious, and his grin widened. We drove in silence for another block, and I felt his eyes fixed on the back of my skull. The light ahead turned yellow, and I braked hard. Something slid off the dashboard and dropped into my lap. The silver necklace my grandfather gave me when I was a kid. Thin chain, small pendant, plain silver. I usually keep it resting near the base of the windshield, and it had shifted forward when I stopped. I picked it up without thinking. The metal felt cool in my hand. I lifted it, and I hooked it over the rearview mirror. The chain swung gently in front of the glass. In the mirror, his reaction was immediate. The grin vanished. His eyes shifted. Not to me, to the necklace. His body stiffened against the seat back. The smell of rot didn't disappear, but it seemed like it changed. It thinned. His jaw tightened.
"Let me out,"
he said. We were still 3 blocks from the blood bank, but I didn't argue. I unlocked the doors. He moved fast. The door opened before the car fully stopped rolling. He stepped out onto the sidewalk without looking back. The door shut firmly, and I checked the mirror. He was already halfway down the block, walking quickly toward a darker stretch of Broadway. I drove the remaining distance to the blood bank anyway. The building was lit up. A security guard stood inside the glass doors. 2 cars were parked in the lot. No one matching his description was walking toward it. The ride completed automatically in the app. No rating, no tip, no complaint. When I got home, I left the necklace hanging from the mirror, and I have not taken it down since. I don't know what he was. I only know that when he saw that silver necklace, he wanted out. Case 5. The Port of Oakland. This one happened at 2:54 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was parked near Jack London Square after dropping off a couple from Uptown when the request came in. Surge was high near the port. Pickup location sat inside the container yard off Middle Harbor Road. That's unusual. Most port workers meet rides outside the gate. I almost declined it, and then I saw the fare, and I accepted. Now the road toward the port is wide and mostly empty that time of night. The crane stands still over the water. Floodlights wash everything in hard white light. Stacks of containers rise like metal buildings on both sides. The app directed me to Gate 4. The guard booth light was on, but there was no guard inside. The gate arm lifted automatically as I approached. I didn't scan anything. It just went up. And maybe that should have been enough to turn around, but instead I drove through. The route took me down a narrow service lane between container stacks. My headlights reflected off red, blue, and gray steel walls on both sides. The pickup pin sat ahead near a red container. 3 trash bins were lined up against it. Green lids, one slightly tilted. I stopped 20 feet away. No worker or hard hat or movement. And then I smelled it. Bleach. Underneath it, spoiled vegetables. Sour and heavy, like produce left sealed in plastic too long. I remember the exact same smell from 98th Avenue. My stomach tightened. The rear camera flickered on without me shifting. The image shook for a second. The trunk alert lit up. Trunk open. I hadn't touched the release. In the rearview mirror, the back seat was empty. In the camera feed, the trunk lid was raised halfway, and something green unfolded from inside. This one was big. Its surface was the same foam-like green texture. The seam along its side split wider as it stretched. Dark interior tissue showed through the tear. It braced itself against the trunk frame. The smell intensified. Bleach and rot filled the cabin. Its mouth opened sideways along the seam. Rows of small, tightly packed teeth flexed outward. The camera glitched white, and the trunk slammed shut. The dashboard still red, trunk open. I didn't hesitate. I threw the car into drive and I hit the gas. The service lane ended at the exit gate. The gate arm was down, no guard, and I didn't slow. The bumper hit the gate hard enough to snap it free. The arm scraped across the windshield and flipped off to the side. I turned onto Middle Harbor Road and I accelerated toward I-880. In the rearview mirror, nothing followed. But the smell stayed. Bleach and rot. It filled the car like something was still inside. The trunk alert flickered twice and disappeared. I didn't slow until I was on the freeway heading north. 3 exits up, I pulled onto the shoulder near High Street. The smell faded slightly when I stopped. I stepped out and walked to the back of the car, and the trunk was open. Empty. Spare tire, jack, emergency kit. But there was a small section of green residue, and I could see claw marks. The lining smelled like cleaning chemicals and sour produce. The app showed rider unavailable, ride canceled. No rating, no profile, just gone. Case 6. The airport pickup. Now, this last story happened just after midnight at Oakland International. Now, airport rides are usually pretty simple. You sit in the designated queue, wait for the app to assign you, and you pull to the curb when the passenger walks out. Most of the time, it's business travelers with rolling suitcases, or college kids coming home for the weekend. This one was from Terminal 1. Rider name, William. No profile photo. I pulled into the pickup lane under the blue rideshare sign. Automatic doors slid open and shut behind a stream of passengers. A few people stood around checking their phones. A Southwest flight had just landed. He walked out alone. Early 20s, short dark hair, clean shaven, no luggage. He wore jeans and a black Def Leppard jacket. The logo across the back faded and cracked from age. He spotted my car and gave a small wave. "Hey, Daniel?" he asked as he opened the back door.
Yeah.
He slid into the seat and shut the door carefully. "Hey, I appreciate you picking me up this late." "No problem," I replied. "San Leandro, right?" "Yeah, near Washington Avenue." The address matched the one in the app. We pulled away from the curb and merged onto Hegenberger Road. The airport lights receded behind us. The road was mostly empty. "So you coming back home?" I asked. "Yeah, it's been a while," he said. He leaned back in the seat, looking out the window at the passing streetlights. "How's your flight?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "So how long you been driving?" "Oh, couple years," I began. "Mostly nights." "Yeah, it's good work, right?" His voice stayed calm, friendly. He asked if I liked it, and I told him it paid the bills, and he nodded like that made sense. We merged onto I-880 northbound. Traffic was light. The freeway hummed under the lights. The port crane stood dark against the sky to our right. He asked about my favorite late-night food spots in East Oakland. I told him about a taco stand near East 14th that stayed open late. He smiled. "Man," he said quietly, "I miss that." We exited towards San Leandro and followed the app's directions through a quiet neighborhood. Single-story houses, porch lights glowing softly, lawns cut short. "Hey, that's it," he said, pointing ahead. "Blue house on the left." I slowed and pulled to the curb in front of a small house with a trimmed hedge and a narrow driveway. A street light cast a pale glow over the lawn. I shifted into park. "Well, we're here," I said. No answer. I glanced at the rearview mirror, and the seat was empty. I turned around fully in my seat. The back door was closed. The seatbelt lay flat against the cushion. Nobody there. My heart kicked once, hard. I opened the driver's door and stepped out onto the street. The air felt cooler than before. I walked around to the back passenger seat and opened it. Empty. But something was lying across the seat. The black Def Leppard jacket. I reached in and picked it up. And it was hot. I dropped it instinctively, and I let it fall onto the pavement. As it hit the ground, I noticed holes burned through the fabric near the shoulder and low back. Not torn, burned. Edges blackened and stiff. I scratched the back of my head, trying to make sense of it. The front door of the blue house opened then. An older man stepped out. He wore jeans and a gray t-shirt. He looked at me calmly. "Everything all right?" he asked. Yeah, I said. And then I paused. I looked down at the jacket on the street. "Sir," I said, "you ever feel like you've seen a ghost?" He didn't laugh. He stepped off the porch and walked toward the curb. He bent down and picked up the jacket carefully. He looked at the back first, and his expression changed. He turned it over and checked the tag near the collar, and his fingers trembled slightly. My son used to have a jacket just like this." He looked closer at the name written inside the tag. William Price, Jr. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Neither did I. "He was 22, the old man began. "Plane crash. 23 years ago today. Flight out of Oakland." He kept staring at the name on the tag. I didn't know what to say. We talked briefly. The older man's name was William. After a minute or two, I got back into my car and I closed the door gently, and he kept his son's jacket. The ride in the app showed completed. 5-star rating. As I pulled away from the curb, I looked once more in the mirror. I think he just wanted to go home. Well, I don't drive nights anymore. I tried switching to daytime shifts for a few weeks. Airport runs in the morning, office commuters downtown, grocery store pickups in Alameda. Felt different with the sun out. City looked smaller. But it didn't change what had already happened. Every time somebody got in the back seat, I checked the mirror twice. Every time I smelled something out of place, my hands tightened on the wheel. Every time the app froze for half a second longer than usual, my stomach dropped. So I stopped. I sold the car to a guy in Hayward who didn't ask many questions, cleared what I owed on it, took a job that keeps me inside most days. I still drive sometimes, just not for strangers. I don't go near 98th Avenue at night. I don't circle Lake Merritt after dark. I don't take calls from the port, and I don't sit in airport queues past midnight. I keep the silver necklace hanging from the mirror in my new car. I don't leave it on the dashboard anymore. It stays up where I can see it. Some nights, when I'm stopped at a light, I still check the back seat out of habit. And it's always empty. But every now and then, when I pass a trash bin sitting too close to the curb, or when I drive by Lake Merritt and I see the water sitting flat under the streetlights, or when a plane flies low overhead on approach to Oakland International, I think about the rides I finished and the ones I didn't. I think about the construction worker who just wanted to talk before work. I think about the woman who never made it out of the leg. I think about the thing that grinned in the mirror until silver swung between us. And I think about William Price Jr., 22 years old, 23 years gone. Oakland has real danger, real violence, real reasons to keep your doors locked. But sometimes the rider gets out before you stop. Sometimes the back seat empties without a sound. And sometimes, I think they're just trying to get back home.